want to welcome everybody here tonight. Can we go around the table and introduce each other? I'm Linda Lukowski, Chair of the School Committee.
Michael Colburn, Salisbury Selectman.
Paul Goldner, School Committee.
Aaron Berger, School Committee.
Owen Silva, School Committee.
Jordan Helter, Raleigh Finance Committee.
Brian Forget, Superintendent.
Rich Poor, Director of Finance Operations.
Can we please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag The notes have been handed out. If everybody could take a look at them to make sure if there's any comments. Seeing none, we're going to move on to the FY27 budget development. Mr. Forget.
Yes, so last night the school committee approved fiscal 27, I believe we're saying 27 operating budget, and I'm not going to go through it in detail. There was a discussion last night. I know several of you were there and so heard that discussion. But it largely puts into a plan the changes that have been talked about to date. So if I could take you have a copy of that document. On page 1, this outlines all of the changes, not over the course of the development process, but from the current fiscal 26 budget. So you remember, as a reminder, each year we do a tentative budget in February, and then the committee votes a final budget in March, and then each fall we vote an adjusted budget that reallocates and trues up lines based on hiring. Mostly personnel lines are shifted around. In recent years, we've also shifted around additional Chapter 70 as that number continues to change throughout the process. But it almost always, it has in the past, it doesn't change any assessments to the member towns. So overall, the assessments stay the same and it reallocates. So this page, or this chart on page 1 and 2 reflects the changes to the budget for fiscal 27 from the current fall adjusted budget for the current year. And just to take you through that quickly, we're adjusting some contracted services for maintenance at each of the buildings. For athletics, largely just keeping things operating, officials, transportation, all the usual stuff that goes up. We are in this budget proposing 2 new sports, and that is girls flag football. That has been a request, and there's been building interest. And so as the interests shift, we try to make sure that we have opportunities for all of our students. So adding girls flag football, and then a couple months ago we celebrated the fact that Triton is a Unified Champions school, one of 17 in the Commonwealth and one of 217 in the country to gain that designation. And so looking to expand that program. And so it's adding unified track and field in the spring. So those are added. I won't go through every line, but just general business office expenses, legal. The large ones I'll hit, transportation. That includes both special education and regular yellow school bus transportation, day transportation. That's up over $250,000. Utilities up about $52,000. Continue on down, one that hits all of our towns, same way, $179,000 for Essex County retirement. Again, as a reminder, any of the professional licensed staff in the district are members of Mass Teachers Retirement, including administrators. The state matches the roughly, on average, 11% that employees pay into the pension system, For non-professional staff, all support staff, they pay into their 11% roughly into Essex Regional, and the district matches that. So that is the other half of the pension for any non-licensed staff members across the district. As you all know from your towns, paying into that. Our active and retiree insurance programs, coming up on $750,000 there. That number was as high as what was over $1 million early in the process. We were told to assume it could be 18, it could be 19, same challenge that you're dealing with in your towns. I know Salisbury is a different provider, but both Newbury and Raleigh are with Maya, as are we. And so right now we're assuming 12%. We've been told it's probably just a touch under that, but we've brought it from 18 to 14.4 down to currently sitting at 12% assumption there. Other insurances, and then the big one, fourth from the bottom there, we are holding, it's a huge number, $1.783 million. That is no other detail published other than that, because we are in the midst of negotiations with our two largest bargaining units, that is teachers, Unit A, and paraprofessionals or instructional assistants, Unit B. And so that assumes money to be able to settle both of those contracts, as well as a COLA for all non-contractual or non-unit employees, as well as all members of AFSCME, which is custodial, head custodial and cafeteria workers. And those are exact numbers. The assumptions for Unit A and B are assumptions at this point. So as we continue, I would say we are making very good progress with both units. And so hopefully, maybe in a month's time when we're settling this, voting a final budget, we may be in a place to make some adjustments there if possible. Special ed tuitions right below that, another big one, that is for out-of-district placements. That number continues to shift year over year. We talk a lot about comparing district to district. We have higher staff ratios in the district on average if you do comparisons. We also have lower out-of-district costs compared to some other districts, and that's largely because we built in-district programs at the elementary, the middle, and the high school, and we're able to keep those students who may have not been able to be served in a traditional program, in a traditional classroom, able to have a district-wide program. So that cuts down on having more students fall into that category in more out-of-district placements, which generally, as a starting point, are $60,000 to $65,000 per student without transportation. And they can easily be into the hundreds of thousands based on the severity of the student need. So that line did tick up. There are a couple new students that have gone out based on team decisions. Second last there, the school choice and charter tuitions, that's a huge increase. That has increased pretty steadily over the last 2 years, 3 years. It's actually been on the incline since we emerged from COVID. Started this process in 2008, and we reversed that number. We had 273 out and 118, 117 in. We reversed that to the point where we had twice as many in as out, and then it got back to equilibrium just before COVID, which is our goal. The committee has stated that. There are districts that use this as a profit center, as a revenue generating, and the money fluctuates, and so it's never dependable money. So our goal is to be able to offset whatever we are losing. We are geographically discontiguous, and so we know we're always going to lose some, but we want to make sure we're just offsetting, and hopefully it's a net zero sum game there. Over the page is where back on that page. So the committee did not ever produce a level services budget. We often talk about that term. At the bottom there is the figure if we were to produce an actual budget that was level services. So $4.28 million is our cost of doing business current year as we sit here today on February, the 12th, for our current budget, and then against what we're projecting for next year. There are still some things that can shift, medical, some salary. They could shift the other way as far as out-of-district special education. Hopefully we have some accurate assumptions there. as well as state aid, Chapter 70. I think there is general belief that the $75 that we currently have budgeted and what the governor put in her budget will go up. It was $150 this year. That gives us another $155,000. So we will see swings, maybe 50, maybe 100. You know, it's not going to be $1 million swing. We know that. I won't ever say it's a fact, but pretty much as close to a fact that there will not be that level of swing. But the school committee did vote a number that's lower, and that is inclusive of reductions. So if you now turn the page to page 2, the ultimate budget at the bottom of page 2 and top of page 3 shows an increase of $2.566 million. And so the difference between the 4.28 on the prior page and this page, you can see the breakdown here of the reductions we're making. There's actually been a correction of the document last night. For example, at Newbury, said a classroom teacher at grade 2, classroom teacher at grade 4. It's actually grade 5, with a note to look at page 7. And if you look at page 7, you can see the current enrollments. Students is the total grade level, class sections, and then the numbers in each of the sections. So on the left, you have 25, 26, and then you have 26, 27. The projections, you can see it's down 2 teachers at Newbury, 1 teacher at Pine Grove, and 2 teachers at Salisbury. So those new class sizes in the right-hand column reflect the reductions on page 2, and obviously the middle school and high school. It's just not that clean, so it varies pretty significantly. So back on page 2, it is 2 teachers at NES, as well as 2 instructional assistants. It is 2 teachers, it's 1 teacher at Pine Grove, as well as 2 instructional assistants. It's 2 teachers, a special education teacher, and 2 assistants at Salisbury. Those are largely declining student enrollment. If you look at those enrollments on page 7 for Salisbury Elementary, it's projected to be down to just under 330 students, and that actually assumes a kindergarten of 60. And as of right now, I think we've got about 34 registered for kindergarten at Salisbury. So that school is approaching 300 students. And so with that declining enrollment comes declining need for class sections, declining special ed services. So in the aggregate, those changes at the elementary level saved close to $700,000 at $696,658. That is shown in the aggregate because of the fact that teachers are in a bargaining unit across the district. And so if we are cutting 1 teacher at a specific grade level at one school, that teacher could end up being transferred over to another building. And so where the savings show up might be different than what is actually being reflected. So we just have that in the aggregate. Those are the savings overall, and that does assume a set aside for unemployment. Anytime that we have to assume a reduction, we are I forget the term, we're basically a fee-for-service. We don't prepay our unemployment insurance. It's when there are claims, we pay them. And so there are assumptions for all these cuts for unemployment, and then also a reduction in healthcare costs associated. Of course. Want to use your mic? I'm sorry, use your mic.
Oh, am I on now?
There you are.
Oh, thank you.
You're allowed.
As far as the unemployment is concerned, could you explain a little bit more detail? We don't pay into it up front, so usually most employers, that's part of the program, but it isn't in the school system.
So it's not a set, you could pay a higher fee, and then when unemployment happens, you're kind of insured, simpler, kind of like car insurance. Or you can pay as you go. So if we collect, or if we do lay someone off and they're collecting unemployment, we're going to get a bill back through the state DUA for those costs, our portion of the costs. So we don't routinely lay a lot of people off, so it's not cost effective for us to insure against that. In that model, it's not the exact terminology, but it's basically insuring against that. And so when we do propose, when we're in years We've had them, right? You go in cycles and we have cuts. We basically set aside 25% of the salary as a set aside. How many weeks is it now? Is it 30 weeks?
30 weeks.
30 weeks that they can collect at 60, 50%. And so then, so it's not, and it's not a clean formula, right? So we'll have someone come back, someone will pop up back on our unemployment roster that was gone, that left the district 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and it would only be a small portion, so it's not, it's a very interesting
I know
state
it's
formula.
complicated.
Yes, yes. So these numbers assume that 25% salary set aside, as well as the individuals who we've made assumptions would be
Okay.
the ones that would be reduced if they have medical benefits, that those savings are there
But
as
we
well.
are looking at some of that on our horizon at this point in time. There are going to be some reductions, so those are things to be,
Yeah, so these
Consideration.
reductions are assumed in the budget.
yeah.
And so with these reductions, those savings, so that collective 696,000 for elementary for, is it 10? 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 FTEs, so 10 individuals. Those reductions include an offset of that 25% for unemployment, as well as any medical benefits.
Thank you.
Certainly. At the middle school, it is one of each of the 4 core teachers. We've been having this discussion, I'm just going to say years. The middle school is set up in a teaming structure, and in order to have a team, you need to have 2 of each content per grade level. Obviously, our middle school is only 2, and so you need 4 teachers to maintain the teams. And so that structure, as the school has continued to have declining enrollment, has meant really small class sizes. In addition to that, we continue to have conversations. If you're paying attention to the school building committee, this campus, we have a certified enrollment for this campus of 895. But if you look at the modeling for our enrollments over the next 3-4 years, it's going to be down into the 700s. And so it's certainly looking more like a 7 through 12 combined campus. So all of those, it was an opportunity. And so that change here saves $476,000, and that's, again, 1 teacher per core content area, English, math, science, and social studies, and then 2 instructional assistants there as well. And then at the high school, there's 3, so a science and tech ed, a math business teacher, and an English teacher. In the VPA, it's actually a reduction of sections, and so this doesn't change. So none of those reductions, let me start there. Elementary, obviously with fewer classes, the result is some larger class sizes. At the middle school, the reduction results in no longer ability to team. Instead, students have a more traditional rotating schedule. And then at the high school, this pretty much trims it back to there definitely will be some electives that are not that won't be able to be offered, but more a typical rotation on any year based on interest. We have an ebb and flow of courses that we do have enough student interest to run, AP Gov, for example, and then some we don't, and so there is some normal fluctuation. This tightens that, but it does not take away our ability to offer electives as a general rule. And so we had discussion about, okay, what's next, right? So if we needed to cut beyond these totals, you really can't at the middle school. There's just not enough staff to do that. At the elementary, class sizes just continue to go up, and you can look right on page 7 and see where those could happen. And then at the high school, we shift pretty quickly to the breadth of programming and offerings, whether that be AP or other very popular electives. And those are the things, right? We have had a lot of discussion with the committee about school choice. We currently have 78 students choicing over to Newburyport out of all 3 towns. It is not relegated to one town. And the coursework, the athletics, and the perception about this building are the 3 kind of big drivers that we hear, usually anecdotally. Sometimes people do respond when I ping folks and ask their reasoning. So certainly, as the committee has had pretty extensive discussion about the worry there, that the more we dismantle those offerings and opportunities, it becomes a double-edged sword there and actually works against us. So the last two there, the high school, the LIFT program is a program we have for students who are, we'll say, school avoidant, whether that be for mental health reasons, or that be because they had some pretty serious medical condition and were out of the school for a month and then need to transition back in. So the LIFT program is currently a teacher and a clinical therapist. In the new model, which we've actually shifted to this year, it's actually an instructional assistant as well as a clinical therapist, supporting them to get back into their regular routine. The courses they're in with their teachers remain the teacher of record. This is another support to get them back and transitioned in. And then 3 instructional assistants at the high school. And this, I mentioned it last night in passing, I should have paused more, right? We had a team meeting, and there was a student who, at the high school, who had a one-to-one, has had a one-to-one for a long time, and the team decided that it was appropriate for the student to no longer need a one-to-one, right? That's the goal, is that as a student develops and ages, that they become more independent and able to work on their own. And so, so one of those reductions ends up being, because we can easily, with literally no impact, but ultimately, that's the goal, is that we're shifting students to become more independent and more successful. Final 2 there at the district level is an English learner teacher. We definitely do have declining enrollment in needs in that population. And then within our business office, our accountant is retiring, and we're going to be consolidating the current accountant and accounts payable payroll assistant into one role. Just a very, very busy accountant. So in the collective there, you can see it's 1.713 million for just a tick under 27 total. Again, FTE is full-time equivalency. So just a tick under 27 full-time equivalents, and that ends up being 27 individuals. I'll stop there, because shocker, Brian's talking a lot. Any questions? Just going to keep plowing through. So just then quickly on page 3 and 4, this should be a very familiar page that lays out, again, that number, the $2,566,779 at the bottom of page 2, comes up to the top of page 3. We are currently projecting less regional transportation. We know we're short this year. Rich is short spending the budget because we're pretty sure we're going to come in right around that number this year, and that $1.5 million is what we have this year. So we need to adjust that down. Chapter 70 is currently at 75 per pupil, which gives us a tick over 155,000. And then Medicaid reimbursement, that is a federal program, obviously, as you know. And I would say to you, that is not a matter of decreasing or changed federal aid per se. That isn't a federal cut. That is a program that has changed so drastically, and they have made it so difficult to claim the money. And that's been over years. That's not a recent change, but it's become very difficult to qualify, and so we're bringing down our assumption there. We had actually raised that. There was a new process maybe three or so years ago. Have a consultant that we work with through UMass Medical, and we were hoping to gain more, and so adjusted that assumption up, and it's time to adjust that assumption back down because it's not happening. So the net there is $1,600 in new revenues outside of town assessments, which means every dollar outside of $1,600 that is increased here in the district budget is apportioned directly to town. So that yellow box with the operating assessment, you can see Newbury's assessment is up $656,660, 5.25%. Rowley is just under 1.3 million at a little over 9%, and Salisbury is 612,683 at 3.7%. The other thing to note, and we've made sure that Neil, Tracy, and Debbie are aware of this in the calculations as well. Anytime our excess and deficiency is certified above 500,000, which has been pretty routine for many years, we take 90,000 out of E&D and decrease the assessment for the stadium bond. Last year, in this year, our E&D was certified at, did you say 424? 483. 483. In the 400,000s, and so that ends up not resulting in 90,000 being put towards that capital assessment, and so we end up with, rather than increases of 1,000 and change, it's more like it's 24 to 30,000 per town. So that bottom blue box assessments totaling $2.65 million to our member towns is the vote that the school committee takes by law, by regional agreement. They vote the cumulative operating and capital budget. It's a bottom line that they vote. They don't vote any individual line items. I won't go through it, but just for anyone interested, on page 4, it goes through the exact calculation of how we arrive at those assessments. And we say this, we've said this so much over the years, especially talking about an alternative assessment. That is the statutory method, the two-step method, if you will. Every town pays their minimum in step 2, and then their amount above the minimum in step 4 with their enrollment, and then you add those two together, and that is the assessment. We don't have a choice on that. And so obviously, looking back on page 3, out of a $2.565 million increase, Rowley is taking more than half of it at $1.295 million. And so obviously the discussions with the committee, last night they had some discussions. We've met with town officials in Rowley and staff just trying to understand that, because that obviously is a huge burden for the town of Rowley. So I'll stop there. Questions? Things I missed?
I have a question. For the total assessment, Raleigh is really taking a big hit.
Yes.
Does that mean that they will have to take on larger amounts of reducing staff and other things that are involved with the school system in order to, meet their goals as far as the community is concerned?
So I certainly won't speak for the town of Rowley. I don't know if you're equipped to talk. Jordan's not going to speak for the town of Rowley either. So what I can say to you is we did meet with the town staff. Debbie Egan is the town administrator, a couple of select board members, Rich, myself, Narissa Paulies, and a bunch of their business office staff. And so they're aware of the number. I would say they're actively working on the number. But nothing can change specifically in our budget that gets assessed differently to Rowley, right? So we can't say we're going to cut $1 million out for Rowley kids and then they see that savings. The only way we can apportion, again on page 4, the only way we can apportion the budget is by that method. And if you look at step 3, you can see that the total assessment to the towns is $45,995. That amount cannot it cannot be apportioned any other way than by those two steps. And in that, so 45 million now, and the minimum locals are 25,366. We're now at a point where we're over $20 million. We're approaching almost a 50-50 split between how much of the budget is apportioned by the minimum local contribution and the straight enrollment. Rowley got hit both ways. Their minimum local shifted about $200,000 from the 199 from the two towns, and then it was like 224,000 was based on enrollment. So on that calculation, Narissa thinks it's the other way around. But it's because it's 424 total. Yes. Yeah, it was about 200 of it was minimum local, and then 223 was based on enrollment. So we're above, right, any dollars we reduce are coming out of that 20,609,000 about above. And so you can do a straight calculation to say, if we cut $1 million, 200, if you look at the percent enrollments for the 3 towns in step 4, 287,000 would be, out of every million saved, 287,000 would be reduced in Newbury, 331,000 would be reduced in Rowley, and 373,000 would be reduced, because it's a straight percentage of that $1 million. So the only way we can reduce Rowley's is by reducing that bottom or top line.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I will add, just to give you some context, the projected new tax revenues in Raleigh is approximately $637,000 of new tax revenue next year.
Yeah, and in the, I don't remember which day it was, we, the first, I think it was at ECC, where we brought last time, if you just look at, without a dollar being spent more next year, Newbury's assessment goes down roughly 80,000, Salisbury's goes down roughly 333,000, and Rowley goes up 423,000. That's just that shift of the minimum local and then the enrollment change. And again, there's nothing we can do about that as far as the apportionment. Obviously, the top line can be controlled, but there's no way to control the top line and then directly have it more effectively or more effectively hit. Yeah, higher impact, thank you, for Rowley. So, and I was trying to put a video together for tomorrow for my weekly scoop that helped explain this, in doing some analysis of enrollments, and I mentioned this last night. We're 31+% lower enrollment than we were 15 years ago in 2010. Looking at October 1 of 2010 to October 1 of 25. These numbers, 31%, yeah. Each town has swung up and down. In 2010, the rough share was Rowley was roughly 32% of the district, Newbury was roughly 32% of the district, and Salisbury was roughly 36%. So, right, that makes for great neighbors when we're thirds, and we're really almost roughly thirds over the 15 years, and really those early, kind of the 2010 to 15, Salisbury grew quick and was up to almost 40% of the district. Newbury went up and then has come back down, is now, you can see, under 29%. Rowley is just about to 34%, which is the highest Rowley's ever been. And Salisbury's come down to 37%. So this is the discussion we've been having as these enrollments have shifted, but really the last 5 years are pretty significant in that Newbury's decreased about 2.23%. Salisbury's decreased by over 9%. And Rowley's up 6.7% just in the last 5 years. So those swings are what we're seeing in these corrections, and we talked about, and this isn't hey, if we had an alternative assessment, but I'm just saying, back when we had a rolling average for the enrollment factor in step 4, long ago in a land far away, that said it's the last 5-year rolling average, so there wasn't a year-to-year swing. Right, it was a different town being whacked at that time, and they didn't like the rolling average. Not going to call any towns out. And now, right, and so that's now not part of the equation, but that flattens things, and we no longer have that flattener. And so we end up with, when there's a swing over 5 years, and you see that one town up almost 7% and one town down almost 9%, you're taking huge chunks of the pie. Almost 2% of the pie has now been handed to Rowley. And when you're talking about a $56 million budget, that's a big pie, so.
I have another question. This just, across the board type of question. With the decrease in enrollment, is this going to become a more difficult sale to present to the entire region, the Triton region, for improvements or a new school to, for the benefit of the students, since the enrollment is going down.
I don't believe so. So any project, so the current project, this building was built in 2000, renovated, sorry. There, parts of it were built, part of it were renovated. So that late 90s project, the district was close to 3,800 students. Newbury Elementary, I always love this. Newbury was 817 students in 1998. So it's, right, the district as a whole has shifted. So this building of close to 287,000 feet was built for a much larger student population enrollment. And so we know that the student enrollment, it's called the design enrollment, that the MSBA has approved is 895 students. And so that will be the target and then drives every decision around the building project. So with basic math, Pentucket's enrollment, design enrollment was about 100 more than that, about 90 more than that. They were in the upper 900s. They got a building that was about 203,000 square feet. With a design enrollment of 895, we know it's probably going to be, if you take it and make it 186, we're losing 100,000 square feet of space. And so I think, will enrollment be a part of the, I guess we'll call it pitch we need to make? Of course. But the building will be designed efficiently and downsized for that projected population. So I think if we were to say we want to renovate 290,000 square feet that exists today, I wouldn't vote for it, right? That would be a losing argument. But I think when we're able to right-size a building, that certainly will help that. I think it'll be a tough argument, right? I mean, we know whether it's a renovation, addition, knockdown, rebuild. I actually heard Joe DeSantis, who's one of the OPM project directors last night, he said it's 10 possible design options. So we literally have to go through all the possibilities. I never heard the number 10. I thought it was fewer than that.
It's 9, and
That's
then it's
huge.
Reno only.
And then a reno
So
only,
it's 10.
that's right. So we have to look at everything, right? We can't say the solution is going to be X. Probably a year from this spring is when we'll have that done. So that first year of the feasibility study is when we have to study everything from knocking everything that exists down and building a new, smaller footprint, taller, building out in the fields, and these become the fields, to keeping some of this and knocking down some and adding on some, to just keeping what exists and gutting and redoing. And it all comes down to what's the most cost effective. Yeah. But I think either way, we know it's going to be an expensive project that will absolutely be a debt exclusion vote in all 3 towns. And it's an uphill battle. We have work to do. But I think that the school building committee, actually Patrick is chairing the communications committee, or I guess it's a subcommittee of the building committee, and we're already getting going on that, because the reality is we want to make sure that hopefully at this point people are clear about information that's been out there. But we've got town officials from each of the 3 towns, everyone's in the fold, and so that we want to push this out early and often, so there's no surprises. And as soon as we have anything that we can start to say concretely, we're going to start saying that. Yeah.
I thank you for the answer, because some of these questions are already coming at, like sitting on the select board, some of these questions are coming at us.
Yep.
And we probably have 5 large items on our plate right now that the town of Newbury is going to have to make a decision on which are going to be the most important. So the more information that I can provide is going to be better for the community.
Yeah.
So I think, and I, like I said to Narissa, I attended a different kind of meeting yesterday, and I'm at school again.
Excellent. Love it. Yeah, and I think once we have, so right now we're putting the design team together. So we're currently out there selecting the designer. We expect to have that done by early April, mid-April. And I think once we have the OPM and the designer is when we have to talk about, again, through the communications committee, what is that routine reporting back? because that's when things start to happen, right? It's been a lot of planning and prep work so far, but that's when decisions start getting made, options are looked at. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I just, I want to piggyback on that because the communications part of a new school building, I mean, you know, this is something I'm passionate about. And that, being passionate about that leads me to a question for tonight. I was at the last DCC. I watched last night. I couldn't be there, but did watch it. And we are already getting questions from parents, and I heard the public comment last night. And so when I'm asked going forward, during the rest of this process until this budget is finally put through, when I'm asked by parents of kids at Newberry Elementary, why are we losing 2 teachers? I can sing Chapter 70. I understand that well enough to explain. I can look at the other numbers that went up, particularly insurance. I get that. But those are out of our control. Like, we have no control over Chapter 70. We really have no control over insurance. Fair enough. But that doesn't make those excuses that we can't find ways to fund what the school committee deems we need and what parents, and I heard a few of them last night. So I'm in the position now of looking at Newberry Elementary, parents of kids at Newberry Elementary, and saying, I don't know why we're cutting 2 teachers, because the teachers themselves, the principals at those schools, did not ask for the cuts. The budget, the level services budget was there. I mean, we knew what that was going to be, and yeah, it was a big number. But from a district communications point of view, what is the message that we're supposed to tell Newberry Elementary, parents of kids at Newberry Elementary? Why are we cutting 2 teachers? And I mean, from the last DCC meeting, I kind of know what the answer is, but I kind of need to hear it because I need to be able to say it to.
Be able to say it out loud.
Yeah, out loud.
I mean, I think there's 2 components to this, right? And part of it, like, we'll clear it up front. We live in an ecosystem, right, that involves a district and 3 different towns, and we have to be cognizant of all of the limitations the best that we can. But I think the other piece of it is what Brian just talked about, which is that we do have declining enrollments. We know that, you know, I mean, the fact that before we added $1, Newbury's assessment would have gone down $89,000. That's a reflection on enrollment dropping. Newbury resident students are going down, right? And where that typically happens is at the elementary level, right? That's a smaller kindergarten class coming in than, you know, you have kids graduating out. That's typically how that happens. So at some point, as much as people would like to say, you know, there's maybe 2 kids that moved out of my student's grade, or, you know, we've always had class sizes that are, you know, 16, 17, really nice for K through 2. You have to look at it and say, you know, these are 4th graders and 5th graders now, and they can be in slightly larger class sizes because the need, you know, compared to the educator kind of focus is not as significant as it is when you have a kindergartner, right? And as those numbers continue to go down, you do have to do some right sizing. And
so let me just challenge that a little bit.
Yeah.
Because class sizes are going to go up, and so for the parents of kids at Newberry Elementary to say we're cutting 2 teachers and your class sizes in some of these classes are going to go up, it's hard to say, well, the enrollment is declining over time, so therefore we need to right size. Now, we're looking at next year, not 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, but next year. And so for the parents of the kids that are there right now to see we're going to cut 2 teachers, and in my kid's class there's going to be 20 plus kids, I have to look at them and say, this is why we had to do that. And right now, I don't have a very good answer for that.
And I think this is one of the most difficult things, is that every enrollment or every formula out there is based on the number of students, right? So when you're living in a world where all the formulas, anything you look at, per pupil expenditure, the budgets, the way that, that town assessments are done, anything like that, right? It's all based on this idea that you have, or you need less dollars, right? When you have fewer students. We know that that's not necessarily true, but at some point, right, you're gonna hit that cusp. It's never nice, it's never even, because you'd have to be at, right? If you have 2 sections of 13 kids, you go down to 1, you're at 26. Right? So what are you going to, you're going down to 10, 2 classes of 10 to get to 20, right? It's hard. At some point, it has to happen. And is it ideal? I would argue no. Exactly like I'm sure parents would argue, right? But it does have to happen at some point.
And the 2 questions I'm going to get to that response are, why is it happening this year? What is the driving force behind Triton School Committee not passing a budget that doesn't make these cuts? What is the driving force for that? And then the second is the process, and I think you heard this last night, I know you heard it last night, and the process doesn't allow for public comment into all of this until this ceiling is set that includes these cuts in it. So parents are going to say to me, they're cutting 2 teachers at Newbury Elementary, so the class sizes are going up. And I don't understand why this year it's happening, and why haven't parents been able to have input in the process?
So I think why this year, I mean, part of it is, I'll just say, like, there are times where we would look and you could make a cut potentially, but you choose not to because you know what size classes are possibly coming down the road, right? We have a pretty good look ahead in this right now. So, I mean, I don't know that that's as much a factor as it's been in other years. And when you do have a cushion, maybe you want to hold on to, a just in case where it's kind of sitting on the cusp. As far as we exist inside a process. Like, I don't know what to say about, we're in a regional agreement where the regional agreement basically says you're having discussions, and then you come to the set point, and then by law, you have to go and have your public hearing, and then you come to a next set point. And I guess this was the conversation that we had last night, is you could say, we're gonna go with the $4.3 million number, but you're not, I don't know what you do at that point inside that process, because that's supposed to be the point where parents can provide feedback, because that's the tentative budget. And if you're gonna say the tentative budget is $4.3 million, then you're gonna get feedback on $4.3 million.
Right.
Yeah.
And
It's hard though, but this is.
It's hard.
Yeah.
But what I think parents at kids at Newbury Elementary would say, give us the chance to give that feedback, because the feedback might be, sure, we want that budget because we don't want to cut. Because if the other options, I know you used to do scenarios too, previously, and that I'm sure you have a reason why you didn't do that this year, but that would have been
Because
helpful.
people used to pick.
Yeah.
We used to have, like, boards would come sight unseen of what it would actually mean, and they'd just say, we want B.
Yeah.
Right? And that's really difficult, because then it's just a number.
Right.
Part of what I think we tried to do as a committee is have it be about, like, the value. What are you looking for?
Right.
Where are your priorities? I had this conversation with Brian. I don't love adding sports at the same time that we're subtracting staff, right? To me, that's our priorities being out of value, but it's priorities across the whole group, right, that count.
I'm just.
Yeah. No,
I'm
I
saying
hear it.
I'm still in a position where when a parent of children at Newbury Elementary says, why are we cutting 2 kids? Why are we cutting 2, I keep saying that, why are we cutting 2 teachers? And why are class sizes going up? And why this year?
Yeah.
I still don't have an answer that is remotely satisfactory.
Yeah.
And that's super frustrating, because the school committee answers to the mandate to do the best thing for the school. The select board answers to the mandate of doing the best things for the towns. The entire community. Right, the entire community, the town, all the citizens. And right now, I'm in a position where I can't say that I have a good answer at all for why we're doing what we're doing at the school.
Yeah. I guess that's fair. I don't know what to say, because I don't know how we do it differently. Like, what do you, I mean, this was the conversation that we had last night, and I think it was posed to the member that was proposing going in at 4.2. And it's what do you do? Because then we're asking for feedback at 4.2, because the hearing, which is, I mean, we have.
But I'm not, that's one thing I'm not understanding, and this, forgive me for not understanding this. I don't understand why there's a downside to getting feedback at 4.2. If the reality is we're going to need to come down to a different number, it's a lot easier to come down from a different number, because I think it was said last night, you can't actually go up. So
No, you can.
That would be good to know, because right now there are parents that are frustrated that there's no chance to go up. There's no chance for parents at Newberry Elementary to say, school committee, we really want to put those elementary teachers back at all 3 elementary schools. So please adjust this budget and do that. That's what I'm hearing, and the way they understand it, and the way I understand it, you just said that, is that's not even an option.
So legally, the tentative budget is not binding at the high water mark. Could we do it? Yes. Have we ever done it? No. And the reason we've done that is because the towns need a number for planning, and we've always said we'll provide that number for planning, right? That's been the kind of thing, because that's the only number you get until March otherwise.
Right.
You know, you're going to be operating, trying to make plans based on 4.3.
Right.
And the assessments that come along with that.
Right.
Which are, I will undoubtedly say, large numbers.
Yeah, no doubt, large numbers, and
yeah.
but honestly, that's where it comes back to the select boards and the finance committees to be able to say, give us that large number and let's figure it out, and let's negotiate from there. But the parents at this point feel like they don't even have the chance to say, put those teachers back in. And that's, again, I'm expressing the frustrations that I'm hearing.
Yep.
And my own frustration, because I don't have a good answer to any of this.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, we have public comment the whole time. We do all that out in public. There's been 7 meetings so far.
Yeah.
The bulk of them have been televised. There's a website.
Yeah.
There's been communications on all of this. I mean, I would encourage people to follow that, and by all means, like, I can be the villain in this process. But we sit in this prescribed process where the thing is, your tentative should be looking like what your final is likely going to look like, right?
That's fair. That's totally fair. I agree. I would say one thing, and this gets back to sort of communication about building a new school. A lot of people probably watch the replay. I have no idea if anybody even tracks those numbers of how many people watch replays of school committee meetings. But I know from select board meetings and finance committee, it's not a high number. Select board and finance committee, not a whole lot of people come ever, but that doesn't mean that there isn't a lot of interest. And especially, I'm going to say this after last night, there's even more interest because, again, cutting 2 teachers at Newberry Elementary, and people don't understand why.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's fair. And I think, I mean, Brian did one of his videos, weekly videos, on the budget process to let people know that it's going to be coming. There's a website out there if they're not, like, I'm not a video viewer, right? So it literally handles it, and all the documentation is up there. I guess I'm not sure, other than coming and knocking on doors and sitting in people's living rooms to say, right, this is kind of where we're at. Give us the feedback earlier in the process.
I was going to say, I feel like we keep talking about the prescribed process, right? We have to have a tentative budget. It's actually supposed to be by the 12th. It's what it says in the regional agreement. We've always done the 15th, and then it says it has to be certified to the towns by the 28th. So, and then we have a final budget certified to the towns by the 15th, and we have to have a public hearing between there. I think I guess what I'm hearing from last night, what you're saying, Patrick, is how can we, so you talk about we used to do scenarios, and Narissa mentioned that people take them, and I choose menu 5. So we have, like, if you remember, we used to go and start the budget process in like November, right? In October, we would start to say, all right, here are some projections, and then the way things have changed, and with the enrollment changes and the lack of that 5-year rolling average, for example, in a regional agreement, the Rowley factor, we'll call it this year, that 423,000 that got, say, 80,000 for Newbury and 433 or 333 in Salisbury, that we couldn't predict, right? I can give you basic enrollments, but we've tried every other way, and you cannot compute foundation enrollment. It is just voodoo that they do at the State House. Not true, at the Department of Ed in DLS. And so there's all these factors for high need students and indicators that we don't have. So we can get close. Like we could say, but Narissa mentioned it last night, actually looking on enrollments, I thought it might be worse. And it ended up, okay, it wasn't quite as bad. So I think if we could get back to a space where we can say, all right, here are the things we know. We're not, we're assuming this if we're negotiating contracts, our big ones, or we know the salaries. On the 2 years we're not negotiating, we can tell you the numbers for the next 3 years. And then we're gonna make an assumption on healthcare, and this is what it means. But if then that happens in January, and all of a sudden people are like, okay, we can get around this, I would say, great, we can adapt then, we can pivot, we can adjust, but towns need concrete numbers, and once they're off to the races with them, it's very hard to switch. And so I think if anything, why we don't have scenarios and we start literally close to the governor's budget is because that's when we can give concrete information and not give any false hopes. But if we could get back to that, if we could get back to a process where we're starting early, there's nothing that says, so we by law have to have the public hearing, by regional agreement have those February and March dates, and the public hearing falls in the middle. There's no reason we couldn't hold public forums, in the fall, into the early winter, and say, all right, so here are the numbers. Based on this, we're thinking we're going to have to, and I guess as I'm saying that out loud, it probably would be easier to have those discussions because it's all hypothetical. But I think it means rethinking the process.
Can the east side of the room get in on this conversation, please? I know Paul wants to mention something, and I will go after Paul.
Sort of been said. Some of it, some why now is, these are our numbers now, right? Like, we've been in this place for the last 3 years, and we're always start off by saying, we have to get a budget passed. What does that mean? And without, and this is where Paul Mayette's point about our process, we don't get an input ahead of time, so we're throwing darts at what that means to get a budget passed. And coming into a public forum with like a high water mark and a low water mark, and this is what the difference is, I don't know. Like, we went to the DCC meetings and, oh, we like option 3 because that's, 1.5 million instead of 2.2 million. Well, okay, but what is that difference? And that's where the community members have to be able to express their values, and we don't have a good mechanism for that. And to Brian's point just now, we can wave our hands until the end of January when we get the governor's budget. And I think we've talked a couple of times in public meeting about, there's a limit to the ways that we can adapt to this as a community, because a bunch of it is from the state. And a lot of the things that we can adapt to as a community that make significant dents in this require us to look at the regional agreement. And the process that we've come to at this point requires us to look at the regional agreement. And we don't own the regional agreement. The 3 towns.
Yeah, and I completely agree, completely understand, and I'm already thinking 2 years ahead that we need to make sure that this kind of sentiment is not present in the communities in a year from now. And so we have to figure out something that works better for next year. And whatever the challenges are that we can, as individual towns, tackle, we have to tackle them between now and spring 2028. And I totally agree, and the frustration around not getting numbers until late, yeah, it makes it a lot more difficult. But for a lot of people that I'm hearing from, it's, this is the first they're hearing, we're losing 2 teachers, and that's the thing that, these numbers are all, and the enrollment shifts and all that, and the percentages are all important, but what people feel is, my kid's gonna have more kids in his class next year, and they don't want that, and I get it. Yeah, and I know, yes, but all right, so, yes, but it's a choice we're making. It's a choice that we're making.
Can I get into the conversation too, please?
Yeah, sorry, Michael.
You guys are dominating this conversation, it's starting to get aggravating. Did you hear anyone talk about the middle school, because where the rail cuts came from? That's surprising. Why do you think that is?
That's my own fault for not having as many people that I know that are in the middle school, that's all.
Well,
I
I
mean,
think
that's
I think
all
it's
to say
more attendant that Newbury and Raleigh has a big portion of the students that go to private schools, and they only care about the elementary school. But the real cuts came out of the middle school. And that's my issue. I mean, Salisbury had more cuts than every single school, and we pay the most. That's my frustration starting to be. And the right-siding that's happening right now with our school system is Salisbury's going down, Raleigh's going up. Well, Salisbury for many years paid almost half of the whole entire budget of the school. And my parents, who are writing me, and it's a lot, are like, finally we get a break, and the 2 rich communities now have to stop paying, and they don't want to. That's what I'm getting from my parents. The numbers show that. We're showing deep cuts in our middle school. And I just find it funny, everyone's talking about the elementary school, but the real issue here is the middle school. And what I know of the DCC, Salisbury 2 years ago voted to continue the talks of their regional agreement and the assessments. Before you were on that board, and before the new Raleigh member was on the board, both boards voted no, not to continue the conversation. But now, when one town is getting hit really hard, now they want to go back to the conversation. But it was fine when Salisbury was paying the big, not. So Salisbury, a lot of our parents in Salisbury are really getting frustrated because the cuts are coming from Salisbury more than any other town, and we're the ones who are consistently saying, yes, we will fund the budget. So Salisbury's really getting frustrated. I have to listen to these parents like, Mike, I don't understand why we got you got 1, 2, 3, we got 4 to cut. You complain about 2. And then you see in the middle school, 4 more teachers getting cut. But then you go over to who's paying what. We pay $17 million. Newbury pays $13 million. So Salisbury's really getting upset listening to other communities complain about money when we have always consistently said yes. And now it's right-sizing some. We're like, what happened? It was fine when Salisbury was paying the nut, but now when other communities have to start paying more of their fair share, it's not okay. So my parents are just irate right now. Irate. And then let's face the facts. The reason why Brian and the school committee has started where they had to start is all because of the DCC communications from Raleigh, saying when they were going to get assessed before anything else was $400,000, they said they can't afford it. So Brian and the staff and the school board did everything they could to try to get where Raleigh may be able to do it, but then last night, a citizen of the town said, we only did our override for our overnight coverage. But the administration and the select board both knew this. For 5 years I've sat on this board. 5 years. We knew this was happening. We knew the right size was happening, and town leaders and town administrators chose to do what they did. Now when it comes time to pay their buck, nobody wants to pay. It's very frustrating, Patrick, and I know me and you stand together on this, and I stand with Paul Mayette on this. But at the end of the day, let's face the facts. One town said they absolutely can't pay another dollar more. That's why we have this budget.
Rich, I asked you if it was 4.2, what would the assessments be to the 3 towns?
All Right, it is a significantly larger number. So the number with operating expenses and the capital assessment would be $13,780,834 for Newbury, $16,276,733 for Rowley, and $17,917,261 for Salisbury. So for Newbury, that's an increase of just over $1.1 million. For Rowley, an increase of over $1.9 million. And for Salisbury, just shy of $1.3 million over the current year.
So when you look at those numbers, no, but I'm just saying is if the school committee said to Newbury, this is the number, $1.1 million, to have that as the starting point, regardless of who's the high water mark or the low, if those numbers were presented, I'm sure.
We would make it work. I mean, that's the thing. We would find a way to make it work. I mean, Mike's right. We've been seeing this coming for, I mean, I've been on this committee as well and sitting in the FinCom seat for a long time. And I know it's easy for me to say that right here, right now, because we're not actually looking at that number.
Right. And
so it's easy for me to say that. I get that. But I'm saying it very confidently. We would make it work.
Right, but the DCC is, I've always said that this is where these talks should happen. I appreciate you coming here with an open mind for this. However, the school needs to know where Rowley, Salisbury, and Newbury, you know, when you hear that number, you say, we're going to look at that number. Not, we are trying to be mindful for past where the towns have come and said there's no way that we can afford that, and to go into a town meeting having all three towns say no is not what the school committee wants to have happen.
Right.
So coming at another of $4.2 million to me would mean, I'll guarantee you at least two of the towns probably wouldn't be able to afford it.
I understand, and I understand there's a lot of history here, and this isn't, I mean, Professor Mike can give us all the history, but I know there's a lot of history here. I get that. I'll come back to this again. We're in a position this year right now that we need to explain, as Michael said, for the middle school and for Salisbury and for Newbury, for looking at the elementary school and the middle school. Our kids are there too. But yeah, it's really tough.
Yeah, because trust me, I don't want the breadth of programs leaving the high school because that's what's driving our students out. You know, if we don't have these extra classes for our students, if we're only going to give them core classes, they're not going to stay here. They're going to go other districts that offer more electives. So if, and extracurriculars, right? And to me, this has always been where it should be said, where it should, more of your board should be here saying, I want you to increase the budget, because trust me, we would love to increase the budget. I would love for it to be. You know, I would love to give our students everything that is possible for them to have. But I said it last night, our jobs as school committee members is absolutely to educate our kids in this district, but we also have to make sure our towns can afford it. I'd love to slap $4.2 million if this towns could afford it. Our community would love the kids who come here. And I always say the kids in these schools are citizens of these three towns that the select boards have to be cognizant of that.
I'd just like to add one point just to discuss something that came up just then. As far as choicing out of the district, Raleigh actually has the lowest percentage overall of kids that choice out of the district. We're at 17% overall. Salisbury's at 20% of their students choice out of the district, and Newbury's at 26% that choice out of the district. 20%. 180 total out of the, Okay, we're here to, I think, be collaborative and try to work together, and you're pointing the fingers at people with stuff
I'm not
that's
pointing a
even-
finger, I'm just factual information, that's all that is. Our kid, we have 52, 53 kids who go to Whittier and Essex Tech. What do you guys have, 7?
I don't
Where else are they
understand the
going?
point.
They're going to a private school. I know a lot of kids in Raleigh. I know a lot of parents in Raleigh. I know a lot of kids, and I know where they go. There's a good portion of them that go to St. John's Prep, Bishop Fenwick, and then a lot of the kids go to Newburyport. I know where they're going. My kids go to these schools. My kid goes to Pine Grove, one of them. So I get your point, but at the end of the day, we keep talking about the elementary schools' parents, but there's also 2 other schools that no one likes to talk about. And the middle school got the biggest cut. So I just don't want to hear about it. Elementary school, we got to talk about the middle school as much as the elementary schools in our towns. That's my point. But I don't hear a lot of parents talking about that. The biggest cut that happened right here is the middle school and Salisbury Elementary. That's my problem.
I just want to point out, just because I think it's important, we have been talking about the middle school for years. Like this has been on the horizon. You know, we can definitely acknowledge that the teaming structure is good for building community, right? But it's very restrictive in other ways as well. And at some point, right, it becomes very difficult with enrollments to maintain those types of teams, even if it provides you more community. And by community, I'm saying like it's the same group of kids, right? Subset that are together. That's also estranging for some kids because they end up on a team that they do not know anyone on when they first come here. But it's also, I think one of the more important aspects of that is that the teachers have the chance to collaborate around a smaller group of students. But then it is limiting. It's, you know, there's only so many things that can happen when you say these kids are, this is the group of kids, right? This is the group. It's almost like if you broke down the high school into 4 different high schools, right? And then tried to build out some of those electives and stuff like that. And that, I mean, I guess it's a toss-up either way, and that's why it's been a discussion for so long. I just want to make that point.
Oh, I understand the points. Brian has been very clear to me, and all you and a lot of the boards have been clear to me. Doesn't mean I agree with it, but I understand why you guys are doing it, and I have faith that it will work. But I still have concerns, and again, I think I'm up to like 40. I've sent a bunch to you, like 40 emails from my parents, and they're upset, completely upset. And then they start looking at numbers, and they really get upset. That's my point. That's where I have to advocate from, and I've been very clear you guys know me by now, for the past 5-6 years I've been doing this. I've been very clear that I have not liked the budget, and I'm more on Paul Goldner and Paul Mayette's side on this. You know I am. But it's frustrating when if we don't care about the whole Triton district, and we only care about our elementary schools, that really upsets me. Because it's the whole district we have to worry about. I worry about the Raleigh kids, Newbury kids, and Salisbury kids. Why? Because I have family and friends in all 3 communities. Why? Because we're, just like you, we're alumni. So it's very frustrating to hear that, why did this happen? Why did that? We all know why it happened. It's us as a community trying to help another community out who is struggling right now to even come up with 2 nickels. But we also have parents who are concerned about the cuts in every school. So, it has made a split and divide in the 3 communities right now. There's a big one right now. But what do? Newbury's parents are making it very clear to their select board that they don't want these cuts. Salisbury parents are making it very clear that they don't want the cuts. But one community is going to struggle to get there. So what do? We make it worse for them? Or do we understand that and listen to what Brian has to say and say, don't like it, but I think we can make it? But still, at the 1.3, I've talked to the select board members, they still can't do that. So what do? Cut deeper? And our community is gonna blow gaskets. I know Newbury's gonna, I know Salisbury's gonna, but what do we do?
Well, I think that's the next discussion is, I think here, we have to try and be creative and think outside the box. I think all three towns have to come back to the table for the regional agreement, as well as see what kind of assessment we can come up with. Think creatively of other things that the towns feel that we should be trying, or they should be trying. Because the school committee can't make the decisions of what some of the towns need to make decisions about. But we as a committee feel, at least at the very least, the regional agreement and the assessments should be looked at. And the assessments are going to only help the towns. So there's some other creative things that we discussed at the workshop. Of looking at our 3 elementary schools, and in the coming years, are we going to need all 3 elementary schools with the declining enrollment that we have? Do we make an upper and a lower elementary school? You know, those are the type things that we all have to start thinking outside the box and looking 5-10 years out of what our declining enrollment's going to look like at our elementary schools. You have other districts that are struggling. Do the 3 select boards look at other towns to join Triton? Those are just some of the various things that I think we all need to have long and hard discussions with. And there's just one other thing that I'd like to bring up. The 9 people, the school committee, we try very hard to make sure we're following the regional agreement, which is why we have those set deadlines for making sure that we're following what's in there. Open meeting laws, we try to make sure we absolutely follow those. We're rule followers because as school committee members, we have to. Our 3 town clerks make sure that we go through the ethics and all that. And last night at public comment, there was a comment that someone made that because of members may have family members in towns or at the schools, that we're not following ethics. And we do our due diligence to make sure we are doing this right. We have the link that I can send to people that we're following as best we can. We've been operating from this very specific to the current situation. And Brian's going to check to make sure that we are following what we should be following. But whenever there's a executive session, anything to be voted on, members that are affected do not attend those. So they have no vote, no discussion, nothing on anything that requires any teachers for them to have conflict with. And when we come to the table, they're voting on just the budget, you know, just whatever the number is in the budget. They had no discussions on anything that goes on for negotiation. And those people aren't on negotiation team on the subcommittees that we have. So when Dina Sullivan was here, she always made sure the guidelines that the school committee had to follow, the operating and making sure that we met every guideline that we were supposed to. When Narissa Wallen was the chair, she made sure of that as well. I'm the chair now, and I never want to go outside what has already been preached to me. And I've been on this committee for a lot of years. So I don't know if Brian or Narissa want to say anything, but we do our best to do our due diligence.
I was going to say, when we've made hires that are family members of school committees, we've had them reach out and sign disclosures with the Ethics Commission and get advice. But to the point raised, I think, as you said, Linda, we will contact our district council to get an official opinion. I think if anyone knows, you can reach out to Ethics Commission. They'll give you advice. They don't generally issue a ruling per se. So they generally speak to you anonymously and so forth. And so we'll work with our council to get the exact scenario, the exact case study for the 3 committee members that have immediate or extended family members, and get an official opinion to make sure what we have done does not need to be tweaked.
I'd just add to that, I did talk to 2 of them, and they both told me they already called the commission. So anyone who doesn't know elected officials and appointed officials can call the lawyer of the day anytime they want, so, and get a legal opinion. So they've already told me they have, so, you know, I think their lawyer of the day kind of knows more about ethics than all of us put together, so.
Is there anything else that anybody would like to? March 5th is the next DCC. We are going to have the 3 state representatives here. So it's going to be at 6:30 in Salisbury. So Senator Tara, Kastner, and Shand have already accepted the invitation. So please come, and I'm sure they'll answer any questions that we have, and we ask them to give insight on what's coming down for the state, which probably isn't much, but every little bit helps.
Can I just, I want to circle back real quick, because Linda talked about, you know, regional agreement discussions. The school committee can facilitate that, but it's the 3 towns, right? That agreement is between the 3 towns. It does have to be blessed by DESI Legal about 27 times, as we heard, found out last time we went through it, and then it has to be signed by the State Education Commissioner of Elementary and Secondary Ed. But largely, right, that's between the 3 towns. We can't drive it. We are happy to facilitate it, but we need to know if there's a willingness to come to the table. We need to know if there's a willingness to explore things that may be unpopular, like potentially going to an upper and a lower elementary school and figuring out financially how that might work, even if it means, because right now the regional agreement says that there shall be 1 elementary school in each of the 3 towns to serve the students who reside in that town. We need to know if that could be on the table. I know everyone will groan, but going back to the alternative assessment, if we want to talk about being able to have this advance notice, the only way to do that is to get ourselves away from a deadline on the 4th Wednesday in January, where everything that we thought we know can suddenly turn upside down, or it can be exactly what we thought it might be, and you don't know until that date, because otherwise it's entirely hypotheticals until we get to that point. And I think, you know, it would be good as well to know if there are any other things that that you might want to discuss as part of that. We're going to be, I mean, I'll say, like, I listen to other meetings too. There are things that you're limited on, right? You can't abridge the school committee's authority in the regional agreement when it's set aside in Mass General Law. So, you know, I mean, I think we can get creative. I would just encourage the towns to have those discussions, and please bring it back here. Like, if we need to set a deadline for that, or a date for that, as to when we want to have those kind of inputs come back. I mean, there's been times in the past that we've done it with not all 3 towns sitting at the table. I don't know, you know, if that's an option, if all 3 towns come. I don't know what that looks like, if there's going to be a restriction on what you want to discuss. Somebody may say, don't even want to look at the alternative assessment. Okay, let's take that off the table right off the start, because if 2 of the 3 towns don't want to look at it, there's no point in having those discussions, I don't think. Personal opinion. But like I said, I don't know if we want to set a time and say, have this conversation so you can come back to the DCC on whatever month, or if you want to kind of just feel people out and see when you could have those discussions, because I know this is a busy time of year and maybe this isn't the exact time to have it. But I think, you know, anything has to be voted at 3 town meetings. Then it has to go through DESI Legal ahead of time, or it should go through DESI Legal ahead of time, because otherwise they just tend to put it in a trash can. And then it's going to have to go to the DESI commissioner. He has until December on the year after the 3rd vote to make his decision on whether he's going to sign it. And then it doesn't go into effect until the following July. So we're talking long lead times, even after you get through the votes. I think, you know, the earlier you want to affect things, the earlier we need to have these discussions. Maybe they don't pan out, maybe they do, but my personal opinion is that we need to try anything we possibly can to give ourselves, you know, advantages down the road.
Real quick, we can't even have that discussion here until select boards, again, take a vote, because they voted not to have that discussion anymore. So that is dead until the select, 2 of the towns, 1 town did say yes, Salisbury said yes.
Yes.
Newbury and Raleigh made it very clear, it was unanimous vote to not discuss the regional agreement assessment anymore.
Well, now things.
So I guess what I'm asking
to change.
is,
How long ago was that?
will,
So,
You
yeah,
know.
I mean, we had a select board meeting Tuesday night, had a very long discussion about the last DCC meeting. So we will discuss this DCC meeting at our next select board, and then we would need to put the regional agreement on as an agenda item, so that if people in Newbury want to come in and talk about it while we're talking about it, then we'll do all of that. So I think it's fair to say we're happy to bring it up, and we'll see where it goes. But I'm not opposed to bringing it up and letting
And
the select
bringing
board
up
discuss it.
other solutions that,
Yeah.
that,
I would have to, I can't speak for my whole entire board, but I don't think they would, because of we only have 1 new member, so you would have the majority that's already was willing to have to continue this discussion and try to help each other, but you would have to get Raleigh on board, Newbury on board, and Salisbury with a
So-
vote to say yes,
but
they
and
want
you'll
to do
bring
it.
it back to the select board.
Because if
That's
they don't,
what-
if they don't say yes, it doesn't continue. Because, you know, Newbury and Salisbury, you can sit there and talk back and forth, but as long as the other, you know, Raleigh still makes the decision no, there is no discussion.
And there's nothing the school committee can do. It's the 3 towns that have to, for any decisions that are being made, for any of the scenarios that could possibly, it has to be the 3 select boards that talk to each other of what you want creatively to happen. So it's just us trying to get the 3 towns to get together and be able to pay for your towns and the school at the same time. Because we all know it takes a village to do the things that we do. So March 5th, please come so that you can hear what our state legislators have to say. Does anybody have anything else? Thank you all for coming, and have a nice evening.